What if you do not have a relationship problem, but you actually have an attachment style problem? Welcome to the Connection Catalyst podcast, episode 16. I'm Karolina, the Connection Catalyst, as the name indicates, and today we're going to talk about attachment theory and attachment styles, which is one of my favorite topics. It might be quite a long episode because there's a lot to say, and I might even do more episodes about it further because it's hard to condense in half an hour or 1 hour everything that I want to say. So I will explain to you what are the attachment styles. I'll tell you some examples from my own life, how it played out in my relationships, and also how to deal with it as well, or at least in a big shortcut. And then, of course, in further episodes, I will show you how to overcome your attachment style. So, the attachment theory was founded by John Bowlby, a British psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who created this framework in developmental psychology. And what are the attachment styles? These are the patterns that dictate how we connect in love and how we respond to closeness in our life. And they shape how you view the other person in a relationship, how you handle conflict, what you need emotionally. So, this dictates how you act and what your behaviors are in your relationships. And they are not really that much of your personality, although they are a part of it. It's more like they are your survival strategy in relationships, which also is linked to personality because the personality is also a set of traits that is our survival strategy. But this is specifically in relation to the other, how we are responding. And they come from childhood because we are programmed in childhood until around the age of 10 with everything that we see, everything that we hear from others, all the beliefs, all the emotions that we experience in our caregivers or our school, our peers, and so on. And then we react like this based on the nervous system that has learned specific things in our adulthood. So the nervous system is always checking, like, is it something that I need to avoid or is it something that I need to fight for? And this is where it all comes from childhood experiences where we were lacking some needs were not being met, and then they shaped how we view relationships at large, and they shaped our attachment style. So you can be, for example, successful and disciplined and so on, and still struggle in relationships because the relationships are not based on logic, they are based on emotions. So it's not like you can just think something and then like your whole body and your whole nervous system implements it. Because if you've had an emotional pattern for, like, let's say 30 plus years, it's not enough to just think that you want it to be different. You need to actually reprogram this on a level of your nervous system in your subconscious mind and go into the body, because it's all actually encoded in the body. And if you don't understand your attachment style, you actually repeat the same pattern in all of your relationships over and over and over again. You're gonna attract the same kind of person, just in different body, which is not ideal. So let's go into the explanation of 4 attachment styles. I created a graph that will make it easier for you to understand. So if you can, go on YouTube and listen to this podcast episode if you want to see it visually, if you're a visual person like me. If you want to remember it even better, you can check out the graphics. And I can also actually paste the link from Dropbox so that you can download it in the description of YouTube and Spotify if you want to just have a look at it. But I made it simple so that you can see it on the graph. So now I'm going to show it to you and then explain where it all comes from. Okay, so as we can see, we have these 4 different attachment styles. On the left hand side, we have low anxiety and positive view of oneself, which is secure attachment style and avoidant attachment style. And secure also has low avoidance and positive view of others. So secure attachment is when this is just healthy for us. The secure attachment is comfortable with closeness, but also comfortable with independence. It This the style that when you're securely attached, you can communicate your needs clearly, You can trust your partner. You can regulate your emotions well. You can just talk about things when something feels off. You're pretty much healed, which I don't believe that there is actually a lot of securely attached people in this world, because unfortunately we live in a pretty dysfunctional society with a lot of screwed up dynamics in relationships. So, in my view, there is really rarely someone walking on this earth that has 100% secure attachment style. But there are, of course, people like that, because most people are actually brought up in pretty dysfunctional families, and we live in pretty dysfunctional society that doesn't teach us about emotions and how to express our needs and boundaries clearly, and to have a positive view of ourselves and others, and to not really avoid people or not really be anxious about it. But we are healing in order to get to the secure attachment style. So if you're any other type, like avoidant, anxious, or disorganized, the aim is to become securely attached. So secure is like the most healthy expression of the attachment style. And now, when we look below secure on the graph, we have an avoidant attachment style, which has low anxiety, but also very high avoidance, and maybe positive view of oneself, but negative view of others. So these are the people that actually learned from childhood that, like, to lose independence is scary, to get too close to someone is scary, and they are very scared of intimacy and going deeper with someone. This is the person that values space and autonomy. This is the person that avoids emotional vulnerability, avoids conflict. This is the person that downplays the importance of relationships. They say, okay, whatever, I can be on my own. I can just be, I don't know, fulfilled with myself, or it's enough that I have God's love, or whatever else, right? So the belief there is like, I can only rely on myself, because these are the people that actually like were hurt in childhood. So then they learned that they can't rely on others, and that intimacy and depth and connection with others is super scary, right? Unsafe. And that's why they then avoid the shit out of people, right? So how they react is like they pull away when things get serious. For example, like if the other person wants to commit, they are scared of commitment. So they would pull away, they would stop responding, they would, I don't know, stonewall you, or they would ghost you, they would shut down during conflict, or they would just focus on other things like work or their goals or other distractions. And, like in this dynamic, like everything is going so well. And then suddenly they just withdraw and create distance, right? So these are just the people that, yeah, their strategy is to be independent and autonomous, because this is how they find their safety. And usually they have the opinion that other people are too much, too intense, or too needy. So then they are a vibrational match. They attract anxious attachment style into their life. Why? Because anxious attachment style actually needs people, actually has high anxiety, and is based on fear of abandonment. So the avoidant and anxious like are usually in a relationship with each other, because it's the polarity. It's like the opposite trauma. So the anxious attachment style has low avoidance because it wants to be with people, finds comfort and actually like reassurance and mm, I don't know, well-being around people, but has high anxiety. And also like, even though it has positive view of others, it has a negative view of oneself. So this is the style that is completely driven by fear of abandonment. By the way, I used to be anxiously attached. Now I'm way closer to secure, but still I attract people that have a microdose of an avoidant attachment style, because I have a microdose still of anxious attachment style. And I will tell you from my own experience and my own dating life how it played out in my relationships in a moment, as soon as I finish telling you about anxious attachment style. So the key traits of attachment style that is anxious is these people need a lot of reassurance and a lot of closeness to feel safe. These people can overthink a lot because they are anxious, right? They have high anxiety. They are very sensitive to changes in behavior. So they can feel when the other person is withdrawing, and they can react in a way of like checking and texting and seeking validation and just like needing constant reassurance and being super emotionally intense, or they fear losing the partner, and they have this belief like, okay, if I'm not enough, I might be abandoned again, I might be left. So like maybe they, I don't know, their partner will not answer for like one day and they already say, oh my god, something is wrong, for sure they are gonna like, I don't know, break up with me and so on, right? So these are the people that actually like have a lot of fear, and they can interpret even tiny little things as something that will completely disrupt the whole relationship. So the avoidant and the anxious, when they play out together, it's like a push and pull dynamic all the time. So maybe at this point, I will tell you the example from my own dating life. I met this guy and we had a really, really good connection. And because I have a microdose of anxious attachment style, I was like all in, fully devoted, being like, okay, I'm a loyalist personality type, Enneagram wise. I just want to give my 100% to this, and I'm super loyal. And then we've been dating for a while. Then he left and he took some space. He wanted to be on his own. And because he was quite good at communicating it, I was okay with that. But while he was taking space, in one message that I received from him, I could feel this fear of commitment, or like the energy of non commitment. And then my whole nervous system reacted in the way that I shut down and withdrew. And I started having this like distrust towards him. And even though he completely flipped and he decided that he wants to be devoted to me, he wants to be committed, he actually needed to do a lot for me to trust him again, because I was already withdrawn. And then it's like a loop. So usually what happens is the anxiously attached person, for example, like me, or like me in the past, I was very much attached to the other person. Now I'm not that anymore, but I would want to spend like a lot of time with my partner. Like when I was 15 years old until I was 20 years old, I had a partner and we were like seeing each other every single day, and we could be 24/7 with each other. And then I would like cling on to someone, right? And because I would be so clingy, the avoidant would be scared of this intimacy and closeness that I was trying to create, but also too attached to them, right? Too controlling of the connection. And then they would, of course, escape, because if you're trying to pressure someone into connecting with you, they are like, nope, I don't want to connect with you. So then if I try to like, connect closer, then the avoidant is just escaping. And then when they withdraw, the anxiously attached person is like, okay, screw it then. I also withdraw, because like I've given so much to this relationship. I poured all my love, all my whatever, and then they don't want me. So screw it. And then they pull away. But then the avoidant person might be like, oh, no, 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 they are pulling away, but I actually want to be in a relationship. Like I want closeness and I want all these things. So then they come again and they might shower the anxiously attached person with love. And then the anxiously attached is like, oh my God, finally they give me all I wanted. And, they go into this again where the anxiously attached person clings again and then the avoidant escapes again. It might be like a vicious cycle of, chasing and escaping, if of course we are not aware of the pattern and if we don't know what to do about it. Because in our case with this guy that I told you that I was dating, like we both saw our patterns, and rather than going with the patterns, we would like see our fears, reprogram them in our own space without projecting them onto each other, and then talk while the fears were already reprogrammed, and then choose love over fear anyway and keep dating, right? So you can still have the attachment style patterns coming up, but you don't need to choose to go with them. You can just choose to observe the fear, to feel it, to release it from your body. And I explained how to heal your emotions and emotional body in previous episode as well. So if you don't know, you can go and watch it as well. And you can also do parts work with different parts of you, but I'm going to talk about it later. So it's not like your attachment style needs to dictate your life and your relationships. You can actually change it and you can observe it and be dissociated from it to see it. Because if you see your pattern, if you see your thoughts, you're not in the pattern. You're not in the thoughts. So you're not like going with it. You can just detach from it and observe it and transcend it, rather than, letting your automation that was programmed in you since childhood run the show. And it's obvious that if I have a trauma of abandonment, for example, because my father left to different woman and different family when I was 2.5 years old, I would be super scared of abandonment, right? And these people that are like me just have a trauma of abandonment by one or two parents. But for example, the avoidantly attached person has a opposite trauma. So the caregiver might be physically present but completely emotionally unavailable. And the feelings of this child that now is avoidantly attached might be completely rejected, dismissed, or just not responded to, completely ignored. Or this person might, for example, have only conditional love based on performance, or they might be rejected in their emotional needs. So they learned that, okay, if I can't have my needs met with my caregivers, I need to be independent. I need to self soothe. I need to regulate myself, right? Because the caregiver maybe is just shut down, or the caregiver is actually so overwhelmed that I can't count on them, right? So that's why the closeness feels so overwhelming. And then we have the fourth attachment style, that is the mix. So let's look at the graph again. We have disorganized attachment style with a negative view of others, negative view of oneself, high avoidance, and high anxiety. So these people are actually a bit screwed because they actually are a mix of anxious and avoidant. So they want closeness but are afraid of it. They have this emotional chaos inside and inconsistency because they are in this push and pull dynamic all the time. And they can be intensely connected with someone and then suddenly completely withdraw. And they just believe that love is unsafe because like these people usually were experiencing both. And I've worked with someone with disorganized attachment style, and the trauma was being smothered by a mother too much. So the mother was like almost, creating the enmeshment trauma. I will talk about enmeshment trauma also further in the episodes, but pretty much the mother was so clingy to the child that the child was like, okay, like my mom really loves me and I want to be close, but it's too much. She's like too close. So I also want to escape, but like I'm scared to be abandoned, but I'm also scared to be too close. So it's like I developed then these two parts of me, that one is scared of abandonment and one is scared of losing freedom or losing independence, scared of being too close to someone, right? Scared of losing oneself for the sake of the other person. So these people, it's even more complicated. I used to date a guy with disorganized attachment style. And how it played out is that we would be like super close. And then he would be like, just normally behaving and so on. And then we would have intimacy and we would be so like going into the depth of our relationship. And then we took some space because we lived in different cities. And then when I visited him again, I came to him, he said to me like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not able to give you any like romantic or sexual energy. And I was like, what the hell, we've been just connecting for a few weeks on a romantic and sexual level, and now like you're telling me like, no, I just cannot. So then we started working on it, and then we discovered that he has this, you know disorganized attachment style. I mean, I discovered it, I told him, and then he was like, oh wow, I actually do. And we watched some videos about it, and then we did some sessions for it. So there was the part of him that was actually scared of losing me and scared of being abandoned by me. And then there was also a part of him that was scared of losing himself in a relationship. So, for example, scared of losing his routine, scared of being too invested in a relationship and not focusing on his work, on his money goals, and on his things, scared of being a people pleaser again and not holding his boundaries. So, pretty much scared of, yeah, just losing himself and his independence and autonomy in a relationship. And so when we reprogrammed these patterns, we did a few sessions for it. He was just like back to normal, back to giving me all the love, all the sexuality and romance and so on. Because like this is just the coping mechanism. The attachment style stuff that is coming up is just a safety strategy for us to avoid what we didn't want in childhood. But it doesn't have to be true right now. And it was a roller coaster because he was completely in, then completely out, then completely in, then completely out. And like if someone is not aware of it as we were, and told him like, hey, this is what's happening, it's your like disorganized attachment style, let's work on it, then it can completely disrupt the relationship and bring so much chaos that this other person is just so dysregulated that they just can't handle it. That's why it's so important to work on your attachment style. That's why I created this whole emotion alchemy blueprint online course to help you work with your emotions so that you can release the fear of abandonment as an anxiously attached person, or the fear of intimacy and losing yourself as a avoidantly attached person, or both if you're disorganized, because it's like dictating our life. And we need to learn how to get out of these patterns if we want to be happy in our relationships. Because we are not going to be happy in our partnership if it's our childhood that dictates how we act right now, rather than our conscious adult heart based self. So if you want, I will put the link to the course in the YouTube and Spotify description. You can purchase it there. But I really cannot highlight enough how important it is to know your attachment style, to know what benefits and drawbacks it has, to notice when it shows up in your life and in your relationships, and then to change it, and not to go with it, but just to observe it and choose differently. One thing that is very important to mention about attachment styles is that we all have both inside. When you have disorganized attachment style, you identify with both your anxiously and avoidantly attached part at the same time. So they are coming out in your life and you see both of them. But actually, I did a lot of parts work on myself, because parts work is one of the modalities that is perfect for releasing emotions linked to attachment style and resolving the conflict between them inside. And even though I perceive myself as being anxiously attached for my whole life almost, I actually went into the part of me that is not committed or that is avoidant and discovered that I have both in me. And we all have both in us. Because even if you're anxiously attached, but you attract a person that is even more anxiously attached, you might become avoidantly attached. And therefore, the way to heal your attachment style is also with parts work. I was talking about how to do parts work in my previous podcast episode. So if you don't know, go check it out there, or you can sign up for a session with me as well. I do parts work with my clients. Or you can also learn how to do parts work in my emotion alchemy blueprint course. Because this modality is just incredible. You are becoming the anxiously attached part, and then you're becoming the avoidantly attached part, and you see the conflict between them. And then when you balance and integrate both of these parts of you within, you're becoming more whole and less of vibrational match to people who are also, like, in a way incomplete, who are also on the spectrum of the attachment style. So you become more and more securely attached by integrating all these parts of you that are not securely attached, by resolving the internal conflict between them. Because obviously, the part of you that is scared of abandonment is going to have different needs, desires, role, values, and so on, and emotions, than the part of you that is scared of losing independence and freedom and autonomy, right? And both parts are existing within you. It's just that we identified with one of them based on childhood experience. For example, in a perspective of anxiously attached person, like we might have a caregiver that was unpredictable, so-called hot and cold love, or we might have been, I don't know, inconsistently given love, or for example, we could have like lack of reassurance in specific way, or this is a big one, we might have to become a parent for our parent, right? So that's also like, if we had to take care of a parent emotionally, we might just be anxiously attached, because then we learn that love means giving more than I receive. And then this anxious attachment style stems from it, where we feel like we have to earn the connection, right? So yeah, we have the core wound of attachment where, like, if I'm not enough, I don't prove or whatever, I will be abandoned. So yeah, we're also screwed. Actually, every attachment style apart from secure is a little bit screwed. And yeah, that's why we can then overthink everything, right? As I said, and we can have a lot of fear when a partner pulls away. and stuff. So let me give you another example of how this anxious avoidant dynamic might play out in life. Let's say that there's a couple and the girl is anxiously attached and the guy is avoidantly attached. So they had an amazing weekend together. They were so close. They had a lot of great sex and they went for a trip to a different city and then they are coming back and the guy is not texting the girl for like 24 hours. So then she becomes hyper vigilant. She's becoming fearful, right? What if he doesn't like me anymore? What happened? There was so much closeness and now he doesn't even talk to me. Oh my God, like he's texting less. Like, why does it take him so long to reply? Energy feels different for me right now. He's withdrawing. Did I do something wrong? Are they losing interest in me? Was it too much? Was I too much? And then they feel all this fear and urgency and control and anxiety and they just want to bring this closeness. So they send another message to connect, right? They try to reconnect as deeply as possible. Maybe they ask, like, oh, is everything okay? And they overanalyze. Like she starts like overanalyze every conversation they've had and everything throughout the weekend. And from the man's perspective, there's avoidant. He feels the intensity of the weekend, so now he has to decompress and like integrate it all because subconsciously he might be overwhelmed by the closeness and by the intensity and by everything that this woman was giving him. So then he thinks, oh my God, that was so much, it was too much, I actually need space. Oh, I don't want to lose my independence, I can't be too close to her because then I will become a people pleaser, or maybe I will not do the shit that I want to do. And I'm a man, I want to fulfill my goals and mission in life. And he feels then a lot of pressure, especially that she is already fearful. So she is kind of like energetically just like coming on him and trying to control him. So then when he feels this pressure, he actually like escapes, right? So he might also feel like stress, but it might be suppressed. He might numb also himself. So he then replies slower, he creates distance, he focuses on other things like work, right? Or whatever he wants to do. And then he avoids the emotional conversation. So even if she is texting like, hey, what happened? Like, how do you feel? Like, I feel that you're distant or whatever. He's just like, no, everything is fine. Or like, no, I'm just not feeling it, not feeling like talking or whatever, right? Depending on the awareness of the man, obviously. So then what happens? The anxiously attached woman feels the distance, so they reach out more, they cling more, and then when the avoidant person feels pursued, they pull away more. So then this creates this like chasing versus distancing dynamic, and also like the emotional spiral, right? Because the more she clings, the more he escapes, and so on. And then they just misunderstand each other on both sides. And if there's no communication, no clear like statement of, hey, this is how it is, this is how I feel, and whatever, then it's a recipe for absolute disaster. And I've seen it in relationships multiple times when the problems with the attachment styles just completely like disrupted the couples, right? So the anxious woman is thinking, oh, they don't like me anymore, they are losing interest, I need to fix this. What can I do to prove that I'm worthy of this love? And then the avoidant person, the guy, thinks, oh no, they are too much, too intense, I need space. And what the avoidant guy can do at this point is sabotage, meaning think of, actually, maybe she is a bit too ugly for me, maybe I can find a supermodel to date, maybe she doesn't have enough interest in my hobbies, maybe she is just too much emotionally, maybe she's too intense. And they have the ideal like picture of their partner in their mind, of their ideal partner, and then they compare this person, and no one is perfect. So obviously this anxiously attached girl will fail to meet his expectations because if he creates like a perfect vision of a perfect woman who doesn't exist, of course she's going to fail to meet his demands. And then he has a great excuse to just escape this relationship or to avoid her more, right? Create distance. And like I have the example from my life where the guy was like in this space of like, oh, I'm scared of commitment, I don't want to commit to her. And then he was like, walking the street and like looking at other ladies, other girls, just to like sabotage our connection, just to like feel the sense of freedom that I can do whatever I want. She's not gonna put me in a cage, right? So this could be also self-sabotage. And avoidantly attached people and avoidantly attached people are amazing at sabotage, which is not really sabotage because these avoidantly attached parts want the best for us, but this is quote unquote sabotage because they can come up with so many reasons, so many excuses why this anxiously attached person is not good for me that it's crazy, right? So yeah, it's very often times that they just compare them to the most perfect ideal version of their imaginary ideal partner, and then it's impossible to meet these expectations, so then they drop the relationship completely. So if the girl doesn't realize that she is too clingy and she needs the guy too much, and maybe to spend 24 hours a day with a partner, it's actually not healthy for her. And if the man doesn't realize that all these excuses that he has of the sabotage that he has, thinking that she is not enough for him somehow or too much, like, and doesn't reprogram his avoidant attachment style, like, guess what's gonna happen? It's just gonna be a downward spiral. And if you don't heal it in one relationship, I can assure you that you're gonna meet the same attachment style in a different person. And you've probably already experienced it. Let me know in the comments if you did, but you've probably already seen that, fuck, I keep attracting the same dynamic, even if the people that I'm with are different. And of course, there's different spectrum of avoidant and anxious attachment style, because as I said, I feel like I'm securely attached with a microdose of anxious attachment because I might not have healed all the abandonment wounds yet, but I feel way more secure than in the past. In the past, I was like super anxiously attached. But even though we might still see the patterns, as I said, we don't need to go with them. And the more we reprogram the unconscious behaviors, the more we are securely attached and the more peaceful and wholesome our love feels. And then we might find that when we meet the next person, we actually feel at peace with them rather than this obsession about them. And I was talking about why we attract emotionally unavailable people and how to differentiate from, the obsession that we have and the real love that we might have with someone in previous episodes. So if you're interested, you can watch that. But then, if you heal your attachment style, if you attract more securely attached person into your life, the law of the connection will feel so much more grounded, so much more at peace, not like this boom, the obsessive freaking thinking about someone. And that's also even for avoidantly attached person, it can happen as well, because of course at the beginning there are love hormones, the honeymoon effect and all these things. So even the avoidantly attached person might seem like they are in, but as the relationship goes and the connection deepens, at some point they might just flip when they feel like, oh no, this is the point where I'm losing my freedom, when I need to commit and I don't want to commit, so then they flip, right? So that's why if you don't reprogram your attachment style, things can change from day one to day two, and that's why it's so unpredictable and uncertain. And thus, I highly recommend to heal it. Get my emotion alchemy blueprint. This can help you a lot if you don't know how to do it. And I will continue talking about disorganized attachment style and maybe even more about communication in attachment style in further episodes. But for now, this is it because it's already quite a long podcast. So if you're anxiously or avoidantly attached, or you might have a disorganized attachment style, let me know in the comments how it plays out in your life, in your relationships. I'm really curious. If you have any questions, also please post them in the comments, or you can text me at theconnectioncatalyst@gmail.com. And for now, thank you so much for being here. If you feel like you struggle to work on these things by yourself, I'm also a couple therapist. I'm also working with emotions with individuals. So if you want a private support, one-on-one personalized guidance, contact me. You can also find my website, karolinakuraj.com, Karolina with K, Kuraj.com. So thanks a lot for listening, and until the next episode.